Hi, this is Frank Shamrock, MMA legend, UFC superstar, and you're listening to MMA Crib Fighting Talk.
Gregory Stone, MMAcrib.com. On today's show, we'll be discussing Bellator so far under the guidance of Scott Coker. Now, joining me on today's show, we have MMAcrib.com's Greg Marshall. Welcome to the show, Greg.
All right, man. How's it going?
Not too bad.
Good, good.
Now, Greg, there's been a few ins and outs at Bellator recently since the arrival of Scott Coker. Also, Scott Coker's managed to put on a few cards now, which are coming in the next couple of weeks, Greg. So hopefully we can discuss some of the ins and outs, and we'll talk about a few of Scott Coker's cards and give our expert opinion on them.
Yeah, expert being the word.
Yeah. Now, let's start with the outs, Greg. Obviously, the big one, Eddie Alvarez. Now, we all know the background story to this. Bellator, they tried hanging on to him. There was a big lawsuit dragging on for, well over a year, Greg, I think it was.
Yeah.
Obviously, lost the title. Chandler was the champion. They was looking at getting a rematch on the go, so that dragged on for a long time. They've just let him go now to the UFC. Is that a good move or a bad move, in your opinion, Greg?
I think it's a good move for them to gain a bit of respectability back, because all what happened during that period, they've gained a real bad name for themselves, and they know for a fact that when his contract runs out this time, he's free to go. So it made sense just to let him go, especially seeing that they've got a interim champion anyway. So it's not like they've left the championship in no man's land. They've got a champion ready to go. So it kind of made sense at the time this time. And it makes them look good at the end of it as well, despite losing a really good fighter.
Well, it is, because he's the third man. If you remember when, like Will Brooks, he defeated Michael Chandler for the belt. Now, it's like, you don't need a third man in there, do you, really? You don't, like... Because obviously there was the Michael Chandler, Eddie Alvarez, they was looking at the third fight. But Bjorn wanted that third fight. He didn't want fucking Will Brooks stepping in there. He had no choice. He didn't think Will Brooks was going to take the title. Now, basically, if Eddie Alvarez didn't go, then you're playing around with three guys. Bjorn Rebney wanted Eddie Alvarez versus Michael Chandler again for a third time. I think it's a fight worth seeing, but obviously you wanted to draw in the pay-per-view numbers. It looks like Scott Coker's not going towards the pay-per-view numbers now, so automatically that makes sense. You don't need that big third fight on just a regular spike card. Obviously, they're going to be looking for the bigger money now as well. Now, Will Brooks, he beat Michael Chandler, so automatically that's a storyline in itself. It was a close fight, so you can build them two together. The title's been vacated, so now Will Brooks should be the official champion, because we don't like these interim champions, Greg. Like I mentioned, when there's three people involved, who are you going to have? You're going to have Will Brooks versus Eddie Alvarez, then what? You're going to have Michael Chandler sitting on the side. Now, as we've seen, it's always been close fights with Eddie Alvarez and Michael Chandler, Will Brooks and Michael Chandler. So Michael Chandler is on the level of these two guys. So losing one of the guys doesn't hurt so much, you know what I mean? And like you said, it just builds up their reputation with the fighters. So getting them fighters now, it's a family-friendly organisation, Well, a fighter-friendly organisation, not family-friendly. So it basically builds their reputation up with managers and fighters now. And also, losing Eddie Alvarez really doesn't hurt, because now they can have Michael Chandler versus Will Brooks. And, it's a close fight. You can sell it. And it's not pay-per-view worthy, but they're not going towards pay-per-views anyway now. So I like it personally, I really do. And now we get to see Eddie Alvarez fight the big boys in the UFC, which I think we've all been looking forward to be honest.
Yeah, now we get to see what he really can do.
So we both agree on that there, Greg. It benefits Bellator, and it certainly benefits the UFC.
Yeah, definitely.
And the fans too. Yeah.
The fans are the most.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about War Machine. They obviously cut War Machine for, legal reasons of him bashing his girlfriend about. But if you look at this, Greg, now, War Machine, if he didn't beat up his girlfriend, he's a big fucking name for him. They put a lot of stock into him. They really promoted him. Bjorn put a lot of time and effort into building this guy. So, on the whole, it was a good decision to cut him, because you don't want to be sticking around a wife beater who nearly killed his fucking... Well, not a wife beater, she wasn't his wife. Girlfriend beater who fucking nearly killed her, The story still isn't released, so I don't want to... I'll say allegedly, because the story is not official yet. Obviously, you can look at her face and, it wasn't a fucking mysterious ghost what beat her up, but still... I think this is quite bad for Bellator, to be honest with you, because if you take away the fact that he didn't do this, that's a big name and a lot of time and effort just gone out the window there, Greg. What do you make of it? Would you agree?
No, he was nothing anyway. He was losing against guys anyway. He's shite. He's got a bit of a name, but he's just not worth the baggage. They gave him a second chance when he came back after doing shit before and getting himself locked up. They even played on it, tried to build a name off of it for him, and he's an arsehole, and he deserves no place in any MMA cage. So for me, no, I couldn't give a fuck.
Well, talking about War Machine, good friend Phil Brownie, who trains with him, apparently he got cut because he was sticking up for War Machine. I didn't know exactly what he said. I've not seen the tweets about him sticking up for War Machine. I don't actually know how he stuck up for him. I don't know if he said she deserved it or good on you, War Machine. I don't know what he said. But apparently it was enough to piss off Bellator, and they released him anyway. So, but the strange thing here is, Greg, we actually don't have no confirmation. There's not an official release by Bellator. They've not released a statement saying, we've got rid of Phil Baroni. That's not come yet. It's just been basically a tweet by Phil Baroni. But give your opinion on Phil Baroni being released or potentially being released, and is it a good move?
Is it a good move? Again, yeah, probably, because, again, he's shit.
Yeah.
To be brutally honest. He, like 6 years ago, yeah, it might have been a shock to see him cut, but the guy's won 2 fights in his last 11 or something like that. That's just not a guy that needs to be around, and he'll be getting paid good money. You can't pay good money to a guy who basically doesn't perform anymore. So, on that basis, yeah, he deserved to be cut. He was given a chance when he really didn't deserve a chance anyway. And he was given a guy in Carol Parisian, another guy who is kind of coming back, who hasn't had the best of times, and he lost brutally. He lost brutally.
I so like him.
Yeah. So he lost that brutally. So he kind of got his chance and he's gone. So be it. I don't believe it's got anything to do with any fucking support for War Machine, personally.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. It's like you say, I think mainly beyond bringing him off his name, to be honest with you. It certainly wasn't off merit. I like Phil Baroni, so I don't like ripping into him, but let's be honest here, we want to see the best fighters, and Bellator, it's the number 2 organisation right now, and the guy was coming off 2 losses in 1FC, and, you know, he broke his ankle, dislocated his ankle, broke his leg, something like that. Anyway, it's a very severe injury. You know, if you're a number 2 organisation, you don't take risks on fighters like that. And there was some interest because he was dropping down to lightweight apparently, so that was interesting. You could sort of give him a chance there, but he got finished really quick by Parisian. But like you said, I'm very excited about Parisian. That's a great signing. But Phil Baroni, certainly a good move getting rid of him. To be honest with you, I hate saying it too. I really do, because I'm not like a Phil Baroni hater or something. Cause every time I spoke to him, he's been very polite, very generous with his time. So it sucks to see, but it's certainly a good move for Bellator.
It might sound like I'm coming across as a hater as well, but I'm not really. I just don't think it's his time anymore. His time's passed him by, that's all it is.
Well, it happens to a lot of fighters, to be honest with
you. Exactly.
Well, let's move on to a very surprising one. Attila Vey, he's just been recently caught. I noticed this before it was actually released, because I was doing an interview with Emmanuel Newton, and I wanted to talk about Attila Vey. Obviously, there was a couple of... mainly off his next title challenger, because Quentin wouldn't face him, so Attila Vey was someone I was going to mention to him. I couldn't find Attila Vey on the roster anywhere. I was going to ask Emmanuel Newton, but obviously it's none of his business. He's not going to know where he's gone. But it was confirmed like 12 hours later, and I was like, whoa, he really has. And you want to talk about Phil Baroni losing so many fights in a row? This guy, his last loss was what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. He hadn't lost in 10 fights, and then he lost to Emmanuel Newton in a split decision and lost his belt, and then they cut him. He's like, since he's been in Bellator, he's undefeated in Bellator, apart from the Emmanuel Newton fight. He won what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He won 5 fights in Bellator, lost 1. That doesn't warrant respect for me. To me, I don't know how much they pay. We're not in the offices, Greg. We're not his manager. We cannot check how much this guy gets paid. He could have been on a nice slice, to be honest with you. If he was, then it makes sense, because we discussed this in private a while back, Greg. He had only a little amount of Twitter followers. I don't think he broke like 100. Now, this is coming from a champion in a number 2 organisation. How do you not break 100 Twitter numbers? And I'll tell you what now, Greg, I believe in this day of mixed martial arts, this day and age, a lot of where you end up and who you fight for depends on your Twitter following. It's sad, but I think that's the truth.
It's maybe a bit harsh, but it is a bit of a sign of how popular you are. And if you're not popular, if you're not somebody that people wants to know about, then it's difficult to promote a guy like that. So, on that basis, it is tough, but it's still a really shocking cut, because... talking their ex-champion who lost in a split decision.
How do you sum that one up then, Greg? Because obviously he's not very popular, so you probably couldn't market it very well, but skill-wise, you could really put him in there and you could sell it. I believe it's the promotion's job to sell a fighter. It's not the fighter's job. They could, if they had the right tools and the right marketing to get him out there, say, look, a rematch, it was a close fight against Emmanuel Newton, he just lost a split decision. You could easily put him back in there. Put him against Tito. If he beats Tito, knocks Tito out, instantly he's a star. So, to me, I think it's a bad move. I think the UFC is going to snap Vey up, and I think he's going to be a star for the UFC. Well, possibly not a star, but he's certainly another contender to throw in the mix.
See, I don't think he needs to be ultra popular in an organisation like Bellator because they don't do pay-per-view. They're not really looking to sell fights.
That's a good point.
So in that respect, I don't think that should really matter too much, but it obviously does. Or maybe they seen him as a too big a risk to guys like Tito Rampage, because if he beats them, it kind of knocks their stock. So maybe they thought there's no point having this guy in here who's going to knock the stock of these guys who are actually sellable. But like you say, I think he'd be a perfect signing for the UFC. He could fill out European cards and stuff like that, and he'd be a great signing. And then the light heavyweight division in the UFC is calling out for fresh blood. I think he'd be a great signing.
So I'm saying it's a short-term bad decision, but I think in the long run it'll benefit Tyler Vey. I think it'll benefit the UFC. And I think Bellator have obviously freed up some funds because they bought some people in who we'll talk about. They've obviously bought in a well-known heavyweight guy, and if they bought him in for the same amount of money or less, then it's probably a good move for him right now. You can only think short-term right now. I think Bellator is certainly going short-term. With a long-term plan of bringing in, these up-and-coming fighters, cutting some of the wage bill down, what they've got going on, because I think they had some, fighters on a lot of money, especially Phil Baroni. He obviously brings in... Then again, honestly, Phil Baroni's got a big following, but I don't think people wanted to see him fight and get knocked out anymore. I think people was like, I don't want to see that shit. It's different with someone like Karo Parisian because he's knocking guys out. He's coming back.
Yeah.
He was one of the world's best, and I'm talking 5 years ago. He was one of the best in the world. Phil Baroni, you're looking at early 2002. It's a long time now. It's 12 years.
It's a long time.
So for me, I think Bellator. It's a tough one, Greg. It really is. Sum it up. I'm going to sum it up. It's a bad move for now, but I think it's a long-term good move for everybody. Attila Vey, UFC, and Bellator. I think it's a good move all around because they bought in Stephan Bonner, which we'll get to in a minute. And I think that was the reason. I think they got rid of him and bought in Bonner as his replacement, which I think for the time being, I think that's a good move
for a short-term strategy, it works well.
Let's move on to the last big name I don't know if you call it a big name, but we're UK guys, so it's a big name to us. Mark the Hand of Gubbery. Now, I've got a little bit of inside scoop on this here, Greg. He actually retired from mixed martial arts, so if you look at his record, and he's only had one Bellator fight, so you'd be like, why has he been cut? One fight, he lost to Czech Congo, that's not too bad. Obviously, Bellator been on Viva, so you want to keep your English guys. But apparently... Mark Godby retired. He just announced on his Facebook. I'm talking a long time ago. I'm talking about 4 or 5 months ago he announced this. And nothing ever came to the media. I was looking for it. Nothing ever came. I spotted it. And he blatantly just said he's retiring. That's it. He's hanging him up after his Czech Congo loss. Obviously, they kept him under contract. I'm assuming they give him some time to think things out. Do you want to retire? Do you want to come back? Let's just give you a little bit of time, Mark, here. Take about 4 or 5 months, then let us know. I'm pretty sure that's how Bjorn was looking at it. Now, Scott Coker's come in. I'm assuming he's looking at the roster. Right, Mark Godby, he's saying he's retired. He don't want to fight no more. Let's get on the phone to him. Right, Mark, this is Scott Coker. I want to know where you stand. Do you want to fight? Yes or no? And I think he said no. And I think that's what's pretty much happened. I think he's evaluating all his fighters right now. And that's what I think happened there. But all the best to Mark. Obviously, he feels like he's running the sport and, you don't want to take it any further. He did have a big injury, though, Greg. He was out for what? He got signed from Bama, he's a big name in the UK. He got signed from Bama. Well, he only had one fight in Bama, but he's a big name. Then all of a sudden he got injured, and I can't remember what the injury was, but it kept him out for over a year. I think it was a good year and a half, which, let's be honest there, Greg, it's tough to come back from an injury like that. Especially if it still bothers you in training or you're a bit subconscious, like, am I going to re-injure this? So you start taking things easy. You can't take things easy in training, especially at a high level. I better not do this, I better not roll that way in case I injure my knee, in case I tweak it. You can't be like that. You might as well retire. So he obviously seems happy, but I don't think it's going to be a bad one or a good one, to be honest with you, Greg, because I felt like Bellator had no choice in this, to be honest with you. But, would you like to give your opinion on Matt Gubbery leaving Bellator?
Well, I was disappointed, but I hadn't realised that he had retired, which was why I was disappointed. I was hoping to see him getting another, at least one more fight, because losing to Czech Congo is no bad thing, and it'd been nice to see him getting another chance. But if that's what if he's decided to call time on his career, then so be it. But I've got a funny feeling we'll see him pop up in the UK scene again soon.
Well, let's move on to the fighters who are coming into Bellator, Greg. Stephan Bonner, we might as well start with him. I just talked about him a minute ago. This is a huge signing for Bellator, absolutely huge. You can look at Stephan Bonner and say, yeah, he's not the world's best fighter. You can class him as a good fighter, in a way. But to me, he's a big name. He's always been a big name. It's like Forrest Griffin. Forrest Griffin could come back now, and you would want to see Forrest Griffin fight. And I feel like it's the same with Stephan Bonner. I think if he gets smashed in about 2 of his fights, he gets finished and beaten up really good. Because you've got to remember, he got smashed up by Mark Coleman a few years back. And, Mark Coleman's like on the verge of being a granddad. I don't mean that in a disrespectful way, but shit, Mark fucking ragdolled him and elbowed the shit out of him. But then again, Mark Coleman beat the fuck out of Shogun Rower a little bit too, so that's a tough granddad, So I don't know how much stock I can put in that. Getting kneaded by Anderson Silva and dropping to the mat, I think he had a couple of good battles with Krzysztof Sosinski. Damn, he got cut in one of them. And I think he came back and beat Krzysztof Sosinski when Sosinski was like, he's on the verge of getting a title shot, Sosinski. He was getting in the top 5, that's for sure. So he's certainly got heart, he's got character, he's got determination. People like to see him fight. I'm looking forward to it. I must say, I was excited. I was a bit surprised because I thought he was done. UFC even given their blessing, apparently. Tito Ortiz posted on Twitter, he said, thank you, Dana White, for giving your blessing to release Stephan Bonner to Bellator. So he was obviously under some sort of contract with the UFC, and it looks like Tito Ortiz is his next fight. So what do you make of him? What do you make of Stephan Bonner signing with Bellator and possibly fighting Tito Ortiz, your favourite fighter?
Well, honestly, my first thought when I seen that Bonner had signed for Bellator was that it was a joke. I thought, there's no way that's true. But there you go, it turns out it is true, and he's fighting Tito.
Is it been confirmed? Has it been confirmed, or is it just rumours?
Yeah, it was confirmed yesterday that he will be fighting Tito. I don't think they've announced a date or that yet, but it's been confirmed. It's definitely happening. And it is what it is. It's another one. It's what we were saying a minute ago. It's a short-term strategy to just get eyes on their product, basically. Bonner's a well-known guy in the sport. Tito's a well-known guy in the sport. It'll bring eyes to their free product. Even if people aren't interested in the two fighters anymore, they'll be curious to watch to see how they're going to get on and how the fight will go. So, in a short-term plan, it's a good way to get eyes on your product. Long-term, maybe not so much, but yeah, I like the idea of Bonner coming back to have a couple of fun fights. He was always worth watching because you knew you were going to see a fun fight. Because Bonner always stood and just liked to throw bombs with whoever he was with.
Well, I just pulled up his record here, Greg. I don't want to go through all these records, dating back years and years and years. I talked about Coleman. I don't want to go that far back. I mentioned Krzysztof Sosinski. That was 2010. They had 2 fights in a row. So he lost one to a cut. Obviously, it was a good fight until he got a cut. But after that, Greg, if you look at his record, it's not too bad. He TKO'd Sosinski in the rematch. He beat Igor Pokrajak. I think I said that correct. Pokrajic. And then he defeated Kyle Kingsbury, who... Yeah. He's been in the UFC for a while now. He's a good, strong wrestler. And then obviously he lost to Anderson Silva. So really, if you look at his record going into Bellator, he's certainly a contender. You could put him really into the mix. If you stuck him against Tito, and if he defeats Tito, then you put him against Emmanuel Newton, I can't see too many people complaining. Especially on free TV. That's quite a big headliner for a fight.
I think that's probably one of the little carrots that's been held for Bonner. I think he's probably been told, you'll get Tito, and if you beat him, you fight for the title. And that's what Bonner's always said he wanted. He always wanted the chance to win a title, but he never really got that chance. And that's why that was the whole reason he took the Anderson fight when it came up, because it was a big fight and he'd never really been offered the chance to have a big fight before.
Well, he took steroids in that, didn't he? Positive steroids, was it?
And I hope that's one thing I hope he doesn't use any, and I hope Bellator are testing, because I don't want fucking it'd be horrible for him to come back and go and do that shit again.
Well, speaking of steroids, let's move on to the next signee, Bobby Lashley. I'm not saying he's on steroids, but that was bad. That was really bad.
Accusation.
We'll talk about steroids, Bobby Lashley. No, it just looks like he's on them, you know. Big muscles. I wasn't saying that you're on steroids, Bobby Lashley. That was terrible shit. What a way to introduce him. I'm a big fan of Bobby Lashley, to be honest with you, Greg. I really am. I think in a short space of time, I think he's learned a lot. He trains at a serious, camp, American top team. He's got some really good ground and pound, good movement on the ground. I like his takedowns. He's very strong, and he's a durable fighter. If you watch his fight with James Thompson, he took a fucking hell of a beating. He was bashing James Thompson, dragging him around everywhere. And if you watch James Thompson's game, he likes to take fighters down, and he's pretty savvy on the ground for a big guy, to be honest with you. Obviously, back in the day, James Thompson used to just go in there brawling with guys, and he used to get knocked out all the time. Then all of a sudden, he started using his wrestling. If you watch James Thompson, he's grappling, he's good. He's pretty slick at getting to side control, etc., and working submissions. He doesn't get submissions. He certainly holds on. He gives you the seat belt. He takes you back and he just pummels on you, and then he works the hooks. For a big guy, he can move quite well on the ground. Bobby Lashley was just too much for him. But the problem with Bobby Lashley in that fight is he's got all this muscle, and he tired out. So I don't know if he just had he didn't train properly for Thompson. He thought he might knock him out. Obviously, it's a learning curve because he is quite new to the sport still, Greg. And it takes a while. You've got to learn, in a fight. You've got to get tired in a fight to realise, shit, that can't happen again. And when you lose a big fight like that because you got tired, and let's be honest here, he sent James Thompson to the hospital. And Bellator do actually have James Thompson on the roster. So instantly, that could be a fucking rematch to put together. And if you get the footage from Super Fight League and you put that, as the trailer for their fight, you can easily have that as a headliner or co-headliner, to be honest with you. So I'm a big fan of Bobby Lashley, to be honest with you. I'll go as far as to say, if he dropped down to 205, I think he could be a title contender. Because we all know what wrestlers can achieve in this sport. Just look at Brock Lesnar. If anybody wants to question me saying that, just look at Brock Lesnar. Just off his sheer size and strength and his wrestling alone. Yeah, he got his ass whooped at the end, but you don't know how much that was down to his diverticulitis or just the fact that he was facing really legit guys, But then again, Frank Mir, you can't get more legit than Frank Mir, especially at the time. Frank Mir was a real badass at the time. He was on a roll. And as with Simmons' game, it's all about what sort of role you want, to be honest with you. You could be on top of the world 1 minute, then 2 years later you could be down there. We could be talking 2 years' time about John Jones not even being in the top 10. I know that sounds crazy, but...
That is fucking crazy. Shut up.
Look at Anderson Silva now. If he comes back and Nick Diaz knocks him out to a welterweight, he could be at the top 10. And nobody will ever fucking, nobody would have ever thought that. They'd be like, yeah, right. Get out of here. Get out of here. If Nick
Diaz knocks Anderson Silva, I'll eat my fucking own cock.
This is on fucking record here, Greg. I'm going to leave this in, you know that.
There's no chance that happens. No fucking chance.
Well, obviously you can see I'm a big Bobby Lashley fan. I think they can do a lot of things for him. Heavyweight, light heavyweight. I think they can bring in his wrestling days too. Obviously mixed up with Spike. A lot of the Spike viewers know him from TNA. Oh no, TNA's off Spike now. So that doesn't help things. He's still a name in MMA, I think. There's still a name in pro wrestling from his WWE days. So for me, I think that's a great signing. What do you make of Bobby Lashley, Greg? You're a pro wrestling fan too.
Yeah, I think it's a great... Again, to get eyes on your product, it's a brilliant signing. Same reason that Coker signed him for Strikeforce when he did. He's a big name, and he'll bring eyes to the product. I'm not quite as optimistic as you about his potential, though. Brock Lesnar was a freak. Brock Lesnar was able to do stuff that other people can't do, and he had a gas tank for a guy his size that was just crazy. Bobby Lashley's got 1 round, and he'll never have more than 1 round. And the style of fighting that he has, he doesn't tend to finish fights in 1 round against guys who can fight, because he hasn't got knockout power in there for one. He can take them down, but if he can't finish them at that point where he takes them down, when the fight gets back to the feet at the start of the second, it's usually one man fighting against a guy struggling to catch breath. That said, if they match him up cleverly, he should win a few fights and get a bit of hype behind him. His first fight looks like a winnable fight. And if they give him someone like Thompson again next time round, who's got a bit of a name, but he's definitely beatable, as he's shown before, I think that they could probably build him to some point where they can make him look like a challenger when he's probably not.
Well, let's move on to the women now, Greg. It was announced that Bellator were bringing in the 145 women's division. They brought in Julia Budd and Malawes Conan. Obviously, Conan's the big name. She's got some big victories on her record here, Greg. She's defeated Liz Carmouche and Sarah Kaufman. Now, Sarah Kaufman's, pretty much a contender in the UFC 135 division. Liz Carmouche fought for the title, so she's beat two title contenders in the UFC at 135, so that's a massive signing. She's obviously lost twice to Cyborg, but she beat Roxanne Modafferi, which, not massive, but I certainly like that signing. I'm not, well knowledgeable on Julia Budd, Greg, to be honest with you. She looks like an up-and-comer. She has fought Ronda Rousey before. I think that's the one where Steve Mazzagatti fucked up the call. I think Ronda Rousey said she was tapping and she didn't really tap. There's a big controversy, but either way, I think Ronda Rousey would have snapped her arm anyway in the end. But what do you make of the women's signings there, Greg? I think Conan's a decent signing. Not to mention, they was going after Gina Carano too. And this wasn't just starting talks with Gina Carano. They was trying to rival the UFC, which tells me Viacom are willing to put some big money behind Bellator to get in these big signings. Oh, the UFC want Gina Carano? We'll get Gina Carano. You know what I mean? And that was a big, brave move. And they was dangling the carrot of, hey, you're worried about making 135? People are saying that you're not going to make the weight? How about you come and headline our 145 division and be the champion? And I thought that was quite a smart, not just a smart move, I thought it was a big, bold move, to be honest with you, to show that they're willing to be number two. They're willing to put the money in the pockets to be the second or even the first. I think they're a long way away from being the first, but they're certainly showing that they're up there and they're certainly the second best promotion in the world. So what do you make of it there, Greg? These women coming in and going after the names they're going after.
It's good to see them stepping back into the women's fighting, because it was a bit sad to see Bellator do away with it before, especially as women's MMA seems to be taking off now. It seems crazy just to abandon it.
Well, Jesse Rai, Kawa Esparza, they all fought in Bellator once upon a time. So. Yeah,
and there's a good few of them have fought in Bellator at one time.
Yeah, Felice Herrig, that's what.
Felice Herrig, that was the other one. Yeah, that's what I was thinking of. But they've signed 4 so far. Bellator, 4 women. They've signed the Nogueira girl and an Italian girl as well. But the 2 more known names is obviously Marlos Conan and Julia Budd. Julia Budd's obviously got a relationship with Coker from fighting at Strikeforce for him before, as has Conan for that matter. And at 145, Conan's arguably the second best 145er out there, behind Cyborg. So they've went out there and they've got the best there is. Coker did say he tried to get Cyborg, but Cyborg told him that she is determined to make 135, and that was the end of the conversation. So it looks like he's at least approaching the top talent. And like you say, I'm not sure how much truth there is in the approach to Carano, because I'm sure I remember Coker saying that it was more a basic inquiry. They didn't actually make any solid offer there. But that doesn't mean he did.
But still, they'll have to have something, in the back pocket to.
It doesn't mean that they didn't. It doesn't mean they didn't offer though. It could be. Just trying to make it look like that. We didn't really try.
Field does an offer. Tell us
exactly. So
they would have had to have something. Scott Cole could have had to talk to Viacom, management, and come up with something like, give me a figure I can take to Carano's management. So
exactly.
But is it getting to a point now, Greg, where we can't ignore the women? Because if you're going to be the second best company in the world, the second best MMA organisation, you can't ignore the women now. The UFC have broke the market now. That's it. It's sad to say, because I don't believe they was the ones who broke the market generally. I think there's so many promotions out there who did a lot of good things for the women.
Strikeforce were the main protagonists for it. Strikeforce did everything for women fighters.
I think worldwide now, and the fact that you can't ignore the women, I think the UFC have really broken that down.
Yeah.
And is it to me, Greg? It's at a point now where with Invicta and all these new weight classes coming in. You've got the straw weight. I think the atom weight's going to be soon. The 145's building up. I think it's at a point now, Greg, where you can't even ignore the women. It's not a matter of, we'll have women. I think that'll appeal to the fans. No, the fans want the women now. That's the point it's getting to.
Well, yeah, you look at Cage Warriors. They've got a huge roster of women on the go now, whereas they'd cut it down to a minimum for a while, but they've really put the work in and got a big roster of women fighters now. And everybody seems to be noticing it. You've got to have it now, because people want to see women fight, whereas they didn't before, but they definitely do now.
Well, let's talk about a couple of sluggers next, Greg. Melvin Manoff and Paul Daly. They both got announced as new Bellator signings together. Not only that, they was supposed to be pitted off against each other, but apparently Paul Daly will not fight Melvin Manoff as their teammates. But shit, I love these signings, Greg. Absolutely love them. I've been a massive fan of Melvin Manoff for a long time. Apparently he was supposed to sign with the UFC a long time ago. He wanted to fight at middleweight and light heavyweight, but the UFC wanted him at light heavyweight, I think, and it could have been middleweight, I'm not too sure, but the UFC wanted him to stick at one weight class, but he wanted to fight in two different weight classes, and that's where the problem started. But it's nice to see Melvin Manoff get a chance to shine on a big promotion like this and really fight some of the best in the world. Obviously, he's fought around the world in Dream, etc. Heroes, Pride, I think he fought in Pride, I'm sure he did. Maybe I'm incorrect, but I actually don't.
Yeah, he's been around. He's been KSW and all these places.
KSW, Heroes, Cage Rage. He's been around the block. He's fought some decent names too, don't get me wrong. But the thing about Melvin Manoff, he struggles against the grapplers and it's never, ever seemed to improve. He trains with Machida. He still can't improve his grappling. It's like a kryptonite for him. He's just regardless, as soon as you take him down. So for me, Greg, I think when it comes to Melvin Manoff, I think it just depends how you match him. If you match him against somebody like Paul Daly, fantastic. To match him now against a very good striker, Douglas Marshall, obviously a good fucking kickboxer. So I think if you're going to bring in Melvin Manoff, you've got to start putting him in against the strikers. If you're going to put him in against these grapplers, I think you're asking for trouble, to be honest with you. So depending on Melvin Manoff's future, I think it depends on who they match him against. And really, he's just the entertainment, I think. He could be a title contender, but I think he's going to be someone who you put in the main card or the first fight of the card. Obviously you sit there, you're watching Spike TV, hey, let's watch some Bellator. 10 seconds in, Melvin Manoff knocks somebody out with a fucking head kick. Bam! Shit, what a way to start an event. So for me, I think it's a cracking signing. Paul Semtex Daly's been floating around, he's been begging the UFC, and I don't like to use the word begging, but shit, that's literally what he's been doing. He's been going on the mixed martial arts show and he's been pretty much pleading with the UFC, get me on board. It was nearly coming to fruition, Greg. Was it Lorenzo Fertitta? Yeah, Lorenzo Fertitta.
I believe so, yeah.
He was having talks with Paul Daly. It was looking positive. But obviously he's lost to guys like Tyrone Woodley. So right now the UFC welterweight division, it's so exciting. There's so many contenders. You don't need a Paul Daly. I think Bellator just benefits so much more than the UFC would. They've got his visa sorted, so there you've got definitely a contender. This guy's title contender. Straight away, you could put him in there, nobody will complain that he's got a title shot. Plus, I don't know about this, Greg, because we were talking before we went on record. We don't know if Bellator's being shown on the Viva channel. Last we heard, it was being shown on the Viva channel, and obviously Paul Daly's a massive name in the UK. He's been headlined by Bama. Bama promote the hell out of him. He's actually fighting for Bama. He's got to fight for Bama before he goes to Bellator. So he'll be headlining Bama. So he's been on Channel 5. He's been big news in the UK market. So signing him can only help with the UK market. But still, even in America, he's a big name in America. Certainly a title contender. That is a fantastic signing. Melvin Manoff, a good guy to start out your card with. So for me, Greg, there's two fantastic signings. It's just a shame that they won't fight each other. But what do you make of those two signings there, Greg? I
agree that of all the signings, these are the best two signings because they're genuine, good talent, and they're exciting to watch, both of them. As long as they don't match them up badly, which I don't think Coker will. I don't think he's brought these guys in to lose. He's brought them in to win. So he'll put them up against guys that he thinks they can beat. And I agree, they shouldn't have fought yet. I think it's something they should be building to. They should have them win a couple of fights and then try and match them up. This should be the goal for them. And ideally, maybe for the title. And that's the only time these guys should ever fight, really. If they are friends or if they are teammates, I can understand teammates saying they don't want to fight in a meaningless fight, but if it's for a title, then they should fight.
Well, could you imagine Koreshkov versus Paul Daly or Melvin Manoff?
Yeah, and there's so many good fights. Like I say, as long as like you said, you don't want these guys going against grapplers, because against grapplers it's kryptonite for them.
Well, it's
you've seen like Manhoff against Kaladov at KSW it was brutal. Kaladov just toyed with him.
Well, it's what I tell you about War Machine. If War Machine didn't do what he did, could you imagine a match between War Machine and Paul Daly?
Especially with the shit talk that they've had in the past as well. That could have been a worthwhile
they don't
fight.
like each other.
And it would have been a fairly easy win for Paul Daly, to be brutally honest, as well. And it would have been a good one, because it probably would have ended up with a highlight reel knockout or something like that.
That would have been an amazing fight. It really would have been. It would have been like the two bad boys of MMA. So what do you mean? What, they didn't get along? Had they been talking shit to each other? I missed all this.
Because they were matched up to fight in Bellator before, when Daly's visa problems came up before he got released by Bellator. And if I remember rightly, I think the first time it was announced, War Machine got injured, and then when they tried to make it again, that's when Daly's visa problems came in, and it just never ever happened. But there was constant chat between them. Daly saying he would fucking knock him out, and War Machine saying he's a this, that, and the next.
Do you find it funny how Bjorn Rebney couldn't sort Paul Daly's visa issues out, but automatically Coker did it in like 2 weeks? And Paul Daly was on the mirror, and he was like, "It's just a simple thing. It's like, it's just a misdemeanor. It's simple to sort out." And it makes me wonder, because this dragged on for a long time with Bjorn Rebney. It makes me think that Bjorn Rebney didn't even want him. It's like just an excuse to get rid of him. Yeah,
well, he did say that, because I think when he was trying to get the UFC to sign him, he was saying, "Look, I can fight in Europe. I can fight anywhere else in the world. I don't need to fight in the US. But if the UFC want me in the US, it's an easy thing to fix with the visa," which does kind of suggest, what the fuck was Rebney doing if it was that easy to fix? Bjorn Rebney should have been jumping through hoops to get that fixed, because despite what people's thoughts of Daly is about being a dick for what he did to cost check and whatever, he's a guy people want to watch fight. It's as simple as that. The Paul Daly Nick Diaz fight's one of the best fights one rounds of a fight you'll ever watch. It was just outstanding. Daly's a guy people want to watch fight.
Well, come on, we're similar now, Greg. Do you know what I mean? It's a fighting sport. Emotions are in there. It's right. True, it's not right punching somebody after the bell, but come on, it's like I was going to talk to.
He'd been punished. You can only punish a guy for so long. You can't write someone off forever.
It's not like he took a fucking knife in the cage and tried to stick it in his neck, for fuck's sake. Do you know what I mean?
It's not like he took a fucking performance-enhancing drug with a deliberate attempt to cheat. It was a spur-of-the-moment silly thing that he did, that he probably regretted when he actually sat back and thought about it.
He was so tired because his arms were so exhausted. Yeah. It was like a weakling punch like that. Fucking Dan Mergliotta was dragging him around one arm.
He served his time, and he deserves that to be put into his past, because, to be honest, the last couple of years he's not put a foot wrong. Well, he's been making weight now regularly, no problem at all. He's been turning up to fight, and he's been putting on great fights.
Well, he's been doing everything correct, so I do agree there. The only thing I don't like is he's been doing kickboxing, but I suppose it's keeping his stand-up sharp, so, each to their own. But it's not something I would approve of if I was Bellator, try and get him away from the kickboxing. But, if they're fine...
I think he was only doing that because he wasn't in a company like Bellator. Yeah. Now he's back there, he'll be earning enough money, he doesn't need to do that.
Yeah, I'm guessing he'd probably want to knock it on the head, but only time will tell on that. I'm not into behind the scenes and what's going on there. But let's talk about James Irvin, the last guy to come in who we're going to talk about. Obviously, there's been more, but we can't cover everybody. Now, I'll be blatantly honest here, Greg. I'm not a big fan of James Irvin. The UFC always promoted him really big. He was light heavyweight. He went down to middleweight. I think he went scrawny down to welterweight. But to me, he's not a well-rounded fighter. I think he's just a good boxer, and that's it. I think he's going to get smashed up in this game. I'm not a big fan. I'm really not. It's not someone I'll tune in to see. What do you make of James Irvin?
I think he's a good signing for short-term gain, because he's got a bit of a name. People know who he is. And if a couple of their guys who are lesser well-known in the roster come up against him and beat him, then it's a decent name that they've put away. So it's a good signing on that basis. And if he happens to win a few, then he gets a chance to fight somebody better. But he's not the best signing. He's not a great signing. But he's a good, solid signing to boost the roster and give a bit of name value to a couple of fights, if nothing else. So, and that's what I think Coker's been doing, basically. A lot of these guys aren't going to really challenge for any titles, but they're going to add name value to their cards, which they've been seriously lacking, which they got away with when the tournament format was actually a good, genuine product, because they were building their own names to put through. But recently, that's just kind of fell apart, and it wasn't working anymore. So now they need name value in their cards. And Irvin, despite being not great, he's a decent bit of name value.
Well, speaking of cards, let's move over to some cards that Scott Coker's managed to put together. Obviously, Bellator 123 will be the first fight card that he's managed to have a say in. Obviously, Bellator 122, that's pretty much all beyond Rebney's matchmaking. So, let's have a shift through in some of the fights that he's made. Pat Curran versus Patricio Pitbull Fier. I think this is Bjorn's fight, to be honest with you. I think that was the...
No, that's not Bjorn's fight.
That's not Bjorn's fight? Oh, because he won the tournament, that's correct. Pitbull won the tournament.
Pitbull was held back and held back and held back.
Yeah, that was it. So, Coker's give this the go-ahead, for sure?
Yeah, well, I presume it's Coker that's given it. He had to give it the go-ahead.
Yeah.
Pitbull's the best guy out there, apart from Pat Curran right now. He deserved the shot.
It's pretty much like the Alvarez. It's undoing the wrongs of Bjorn Rebney, basically. Yeah. This is one of those undoing the wrongs by Bjorn Rebney.
And it'll be a great fight.
Yeah, it's a good fight, that.
Yeah.
Both solid, to be honest with you, both got solid records. Easily, both these guys could be in the UFC.
Oh, yeah. I was kind of hoping when Pitbull was having his troubles that he would get released and go to the UFC, to be honest. Because I'd like to see him there. But if they're going to use him properly, then great. He can be used properly in Bellator.
Well, this is what I like about the tournaments going away, to be honest with you, Greg, because...
You'll see fights you want to see now.
Yeah, because obviously Bjorn wanted... now, the next fight is Congo versus LeVar Johnson. Now, everybody wanted to see this in the tournament, but obviously it didn't happen because LeVar Johnson lost. Now, now we get to see the fight we wanted to see. We wanted to see Congo versus LeVar Johnson. This is a fucking excellent fight, Greg. That's some really good matchmaking. I like that fight.
Again, it's perfect for what they're looking for. It'll bring eyes to their product. Two decent, well-known enough heavyweights who you know can knock people out, and it should be a fun fight. And it's exactly what they're looking for on their card.
Well, they got King Mo on the card. Obviously, I like the way they do it with big names. They got a decent headliner. They got a decent co-main event. Then they got two other fights on the main card. Obviously, you got King Mo and you got Bobby Lashley. Both pro wrestlers. Both got big names. But they're fighting... King Mo's got a decent fight in Dustin Jacoby. Obviously, that's a late replacement again because he's had opponents pulling out of the fight. I like that fight. That's a good fight, to be honest with you. And then Bobby Lashley's facing Josh Burns, 8-7. You can tell that's just a sort of gimme fight to Bobby Lashley to break him into the fans. Obviously, you don't want him coming in on his first fight losing. So it makes sense, but hopefully they don't start doing this with Bobby Lashley where they're feeding him cans. I don't like to call a fighter a can, especially in a big company like Bellator. You don't ever want to use the word cans in like the UFC or Bellator, ever. But I feel.
But you've got to feed them fights that are winnable fights to build their name. And this is a decent one.
On the whole, Greg, do you like the card? I think that's a pretty decent card, to be honest with you, 123.
I think the main card's just very solid card. You couldn't argue with that. To get that on free TV is great.
Let's have a quick look at Bellator 124. Let's have a quick look at that one, Greg. We've got Emmanuel Newton versus Joey Beltran for the belt. Now, I got some inside scoop on this. Obviously, Bellator had big plans for Quentin Jackson versus Tito. That was the plan. They wanted Tito versus Quentin because Tito Ortiz was discussed to fight Emmanuel Newton. Now, I'll be releasing that interview in a couple of days, so you can check that out for yourself. But basically, Joey Beltran was the only guy willing to step up on short notice. Basically, he was willing to fight. So I'm happy with that fight. I think that's a good fight. It's a worthy enough a fight. I do think there's more contenders out there. I like Linton Vassell. I hate the fact that somebody like Linton Vassell gets pushed to the side in a title fight and Joey Beltran steps up but it makes sense because Beltran's got a bigger name than Linton Vassell. But we've got the light heavyweight tournament, Lee McGeary versus Anundsen. We've got a couple of guys I'm too unsure of. We've got Rodriguez versus Davis and Ryan Couture versus Schultz. That's a bit of a weak card, to be honest with you, Greg.
Yeah, again, they're selling that in the main fight
Yeah.
And they've put Ryan Couture on there for a bit of name value, despite him
That's
not being very good.
That's just a Bjorn Rebney card. Probably was still a Bjorn Rebney card,
Well,
to be honest with you.
To be brutally honest, Bellator don't have a huge roster of big name fighters.
Yeah, that's true.
So they're going to have a few events like this. And it's still we're still in the teething period. So they've got a lot to do yet before they can have main cards that are full of good names. And this one, you've got a tournament final, you've got a championship bout, and you've got Ryan Couture. It's not terrible. It's not great, but it's not terrible.
What I do like, Greg, there was what I really do like about the steps forward, what Bellator are taking, is they're starting to promote the newer stars. Like, if you watch all the trailers with Bjorn beforehand, it was a tournament, and you always see the big name fighters on there. Then there was a new trailer released the other day, and it was like, there's basically saying, you know, the rising stars in MMA, just promoting the likes of Lee McGeary, etc. There was all on there. It was a pretty cool trailer, actually. There was all hanging out together. I think you had Michael Chandler with King Mo's crown. There's promoting all the top names there. Really, it was like a very fun trailer, but also I just like the way that they promoted the younger fighters, because I believe that Bjorn Rebney wasn't about promoting the younger fighters. Obviously, you got the tournament. If they win the tournament, then so be it. But as we've seen in the past, Greg, they didn't award the tournament winners the title shot, and they started putting the big names in there. They was looking for the big names to win the tournaments, and I think the whole tournament thing just got crazy and out of control. You know, when you're a second company, your second best company in the world, and you're blatantly hinging your title challengers on the tournament winners, it just doesn't work out. You know, you need title fights regularly. You need the guys defending the title. What's the guy supposed to do? Sit out all season and then fight the tournament winner? It's just...
Yeah, and I can't remember who it was. It was one of their fighters was complaining about that badly. He wins his title fight and then he has to sit and wait for months on end because there's no challengers.
It sounds good on paper, Greg, but when you actually get into it, you start playing it out over the months and then over the seasons, you start finding out it's not as...
I think you can use tournaments, but you can't use them all the time. Maybe have it every couple of years or something like that to bring out a new breakout star, but you can't have it all the time. It's just stupid to think that you can use it all the time.
Like, you could have I don't know, say Manuel Newton got injured, and now you could have a tournament with King Mo, Quentin Jackson, Tito Ortiz, and Stephen Bonner. Do you know well that'll be a perfect time to do a tournament, and then the winner of that gets the title. And obviously, when Manuel Newton comes back, then you can have a title fight there. He gets the first crack. But that's when tournaments would make sense, not titles. Yeah. My apologies. But I want to talk about Quentin Jackson before we leave, Greg. Now, Quentin Jackson was not happy. Obviously, him and Bjorn were fucking very strange. I'm sure he was probably paying Quentin some extra on the side because they was way close, very, very close. Quentin Jackson was the only person who had a problem with Bjorn Rebney leaving. He even said that he's going to retire from mixed martial arts now. Quentin Jackson was in the trailer, and we all know that he moans and moans, but he did back it up. He moaned about the UFC, and he did leave the UFC. So, it's shown that he does back up his threats, and he was saying that he was going to retire and leave. So there was potential, but it seems from that new trailer that Coker's, bored him around a little bit. I'm not too sure. Do you think that they can hang on to Quentin Jackson possibly, and do you think it's a must that they hang on to Quentin Jackson?
It's not a must, but it'd be stupid not to try because he's arguably the biggest draw they've got. Despite people hating on him these days, he's still a guy people want to see fight, and he's probably still a top 10 guy, which people forget. He may not be a top 3 or 4 anymore, but he could probably compete in the UFC at the lower end of the top 10 still. So he's still a decent name value. As for his quit threats, I don't think that was just spur of the moment. Stupid responses from him, I think. He never meant any of them, and once he kind of came round to it all, he didn't take long to bitch about Rebney because he didn't get his knee surgery paid for. They took it out of his pay packet. His paycheck was deducted for the surgery, which he never knew, but Rebney must have done this on the fly. So then he realised himself that Rebney was a sneaky bastard.
Well, that probably kept him on board then. Okay, Greg, I think that covers it for today's show. So any listeners, be sure to check out MMAgrip.com for your latest mixed martial arts news. From the MMA Grip Fighting Talk Show, thank you for watching.